What if the freshly baked cookies and, the perfectly arranged throw pillows at an open house are actually signs of a highly inefficient, incredibly stressful financial transaction?
Right, because when you picture the classic American real estate experience, you always picture that curated, almost cinematic version of reality.
Exactly. But today, we're looking at data that suggests the traditional way we sell homes might actually be costing you immense amounts of time, energy, and, well, hidden capital.
Yeah, because the reality behind that polished open house is often um, a massive drain on your sanity. We are sort of conditioned to view selling a house as this triumphant event.
Oh, for sure. Like buyers are just going to line up and hand you a check.
Exactly. But the mechanics behind the scenes are far more complicated and honestly fraught with risk.
So, we have a really fascinating set of sources to help you navigate this today. It's centered around a 2026 comprehensive guide and a series of articles written by John Constantine for American Home Offer.
Yeah, the main text is called Selling Your Riverside Property, a guide to stress-free cash transactions at every stage of life.
And our mission for you in today's deep dive is to unpack the nuts and bolts of direct cash real estate transactions and compare them directly against the traditional housing market.
Right, we are going to explore how different stages of your life dictate how you approach selling an asset.
And we are going to look very closely at the hidden costs of conventional real estate listings using Riverside, California as our specific case study. So, okay, let's unpack this. Because while real estate can sometimes feel like a dense, numbers-heavy topic, I mean, the underlying human reasons for why people suddenly need to pack up and move make this an incredibly compelling subject.
It really is. And to understand why any homeowner would actively choose to bypass the traditional real estate market, you kind of have to start by looking at the raw operational data comparing these two very different avenues.
Right, because they're completely different beasts.
Exactly. I mean, they operate on entirely different timelines. But more importantly, they shift the burden of risk in completely opposite directions.
Well, let's lay out that traditional route first, the one we are all deeply familiar with. According to the guide, if you list your house the conventional way with a real estate agency, you are looking at an average of 45 to 90 days to close.
Right. And let's be clear, that is not passive waiting.
Oh, definitely not. The financial investment required before you even put a sign in the yard is substantial. You're paying for cosmetic repairs, deep cleaning, and, staging just to get that perfect look we just talked about.
Exactly. But the most grueling part of that 45 to 90-day window isn't the open houses. As annoying as it is to keep your home in museum-quality condition while strangers walk through your living room,
Yeah, nobody likes that.
right,
Yeah.
the real friction comes from transaction contingencies. The traditional market is entirely built on contingencies.
Explain that for a second, because people hear the word contingency and just think it means a delay. But it's actually a structural vulnerability in the deal, right?
It is the ultimate vulnerability. When a buyer makes a traditional offer on your home, that offer is basically an illusion until their bank says it isn't.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, the sale is entirely dependent on the buyer getting their mortgage underwritten and approved. It's dependent on a third-party appraiser agreeing that the home is worth the sale price.
Right.
And it's dependent on a grueling inspection process where a buyer, who's probably already stretching their budget, might suddenly demand you fix a slightly leaky pipe, replace an aging HVAC system, or put on a brand new roof.
And if you say no to replacing the roof, they can just walk away, get their deposit back, and you have to start that 90-day clock all over again with a totally new buyer.
Precisely. The closing date isn't up to you. It's dictated by the buyer's mortgage lender.
That sounds miserable.
So contrast that mechanism with the direct cash route outlined in the materials. A direct cash sale closes in as little as 7 to 14 days.
Which is incredibly fast. It is. It honestly sounds a bit like trading in a used car at a dealership. Let's say you have a 5-year-old sedan. You could theoretically get a higher gross number if you detail the car, take a dozen professional photos, list it online, and try selling it yourself on the private market.
Right, you do all the work.
Yeah, but the dealership offers you instant cash. You are entirely bypassing the friction of endless test drives with strangers, haggling over the price of worn-out tires, and the massive risk of the buyer's financing falling through at the last minute. You just hand over the keys to the dealer and it's done.
That analogy actually maps perfectly onto the underlying economics of the real estate cash buyer. What's fascinating here is that what the dealership is doing is absorbing your friction and your risk, and they're pricing that into their offer.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, a direct cash real estate buyer operates on the exact same model. The reason they can close in 7 days is because they are utilizing verified private funds.
So no bank underwriting department to appease.
Exactly. There is no appraisal contingency because they are relying on their own internal valuation.
Yeah.
And they purchase the property completely
Yeah.
as is, meaning zero upfront financial investment from you, the seller.
But just to be clear on how this works economically, because, I mean, these cash buyers aren't charities.
No, definitely not.
They are businesses. They have to make a profit. So if they are buying a house in 7 days without asking you to fix a single thing, how are they actually making that math work?
They make it work through a concept called after repair value, or ARV.
ARV, got it.
Yeah. The cash buyer looks at your home and determines what it would be worth if it were fully renovated to top-tier modern standards.
Yeah.
Then they subtract the estimated cost of all those renovations, they subtract the holding costs they will incur while doing the work, and they factor in a margin for their own risk and profit.
Okay, I see.
And the number they are left with is their cash offer to you.
So they are essentially buying it at a discount compared to what it might fetch on the open market. But in exchange, they are providing absolute certainty. They take on the risk of finding out the foundation is cracked or the electrical is fried.
Exactly. The traditional market assumes you, the seller, have two things in abundance: upfront liquid capital to fix up the house and immense patience to wait for a buyer's loan to clear.
Right, which most people don't have.
Exactly. Those are luxuries.
Mm.
If we look at the reality of why people move, many sellers simply do not have the luxury of time or upfront capital. The primary advantage of a direct cash sale isn't just the speed, it is the absolute control.
Control over the timeline.
Yes, the homeowner select the exact closing date to fit their life, not a bank's schedule.
And the sources use Riverside, California as the specific context for this, which really brings it to life. The guide notes that Riverside features a huge variety of properties.
Oh, absolutely.
You have these gorgeous historic properties near downtown, and then you have newer builds out in areas like Orange Crest. Those older neighborhoods are full of character, sure, but a historic home requires constant, demanding upkeep. I mean, the plumbing is old, the roofs are finicky.
And the physical demands of an older property often compound the logistical stress
Yeah.
of whatever life event is prompting you to move in the first place.
Right.
When you realize that, it transitions you away from just looking at the houses and forces you to look at the people inside them. It's easy to assume that direct cash sales are a monolith, that it's just one specific type of desperate person taking these offers.
Which is a common misconception.
It is. But the data from American Home Offer breaks this down generationally, and it reveals that different life stages dictate entirely different priorities.
Let's get into those demographics, starting with the younger crowd. The 25 to 34 age bracket, the young professionals.
Yeah.
According to the text, these homeowners often purchase starter properties with minimal down payments. They haven't built up a ton of equity yet. But then life happens. They get a sudden job transfer out of the Inland Empire, or they want to jump on a new opportunity in another state.
For this specific group, career mobility is their highest priority. Their earning potential is tied to their ability to move.
Right, they can't be stuck.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If they are anchored down by a slow-moving, illiquid real estate asset, it actively restricts their career trajectory.
Imagine trying to manage a vacant home in Riverside from an apartment in Texas. You are paying rent in your new city, plus the mortgage, property taxes, and utility bills on an empty house in California for 3 months while waiting for a traditional buyer's loan to close.
It's a nightmare.
That math gets terrifying very quickly. So for them, a rapid cash sale allows them to liquidate their equity, stop the bleeding on holding costs, and be agile. But then we move to the core demographic of Riverside property owners, the 35 to 65 age range, families and mid-career individuals.
This is where the data gets incredibly nuanced. Because at this stage of life, the financial events people face become highly complex.
Like what specifically?
We're talking about major life disruptions. An unexpected divorce, which demands a swift and equitable division of shared assets, or perhaps looming tax liens or severe medical debt. For this demographic, the highest priority often shifts away from pure speed and heavily toward discretion.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because I want to stop and push back on this for a second. The logic feels a little shaky to me.
Okay, how so?
If a mid-career family is facing a complex, devastating event like a divorce, their combined assets are essentially being sliced in half. They need money to start 2 new separate lives. So wouldn't they want to maximize every single dollar out of that house? aren't they quite literally leaving money on the table by taking a discounted cash offer instead of waiting for a traditional retail buyer?
It's a completely valid question, and it's honestly the exact question most financial advisors would initially ask. But you have to look at the mechanical reality of selling a home during a crisis.
Okay, walk me through it.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to completely reevaluate what leaving money on the table actually means. Waiting for a traditional retail buyer is a massive gamble, primarily because of what those retail buyers demand.
You mean the move-in ready expectation?
Exactly. Traditional buyers are often financing 90 to 95% of the purchase price. They are stretching every dollar just to get the down payment.
Right.
They do not have $20,000 in liquid cash sitting in the bank to fix a failing roof or update a 1990s kitchen. They expect perfection. Now put yourself in the shoes of that divorcing couple.
It's already a tense situation.
Very. Their marriage is ending, their finances are strained, and their house likely has deferred maintenance. Who is going to pay the contractor to fix the roof before listing it? How do they agree on the renovation budget?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
They don't have the capital to fix it, which means traditional buyers will either lowball them anyway after a brutal inspection or simply walk away.
That makes a lot of sense. The house isn't actually worth the top market value in its current condition anyway.
Exactly. And then you have to factor in the psychological toll. If a family is navigating a painful divorce, the absolute last thing they need is the public spectacle of continuous open house foot traffic.
Right, having strangers poke through your closets.
Yes, having your neighbors walking through your bedroom, judging your home while your life is falling apart, is deeply invasive. For these families, a discreet, one-time private evaluation and a quiet, guaranteed closing in 14 days holds immense tangible value. Discretion and certainty are worth the trade-off in gross price.
Wow, okay. It's the cost of achieving that price. You can't separate the financial transaction from the emotional reality of the people making it.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the third demographic outlined in the guide: retirees and estate executors, those aged 65 and older.
Right. For this group, the priority shifts again. Maintaining a large, older home in a place like Riverside often becomes physically and financially impractical.
So they want to downsize.
Yeah, they're usually looking to downsize to a more manageable single-story space or transition into assisted living.
And the guide places a heavy emphasis on inherited properties for this age bracket. Adult children who inherit a home from their parents are often staring down a house filled with 30 or 40 years of accumulated belongings.
It's overwhelming.
The text points out that these executors usually live out of town, they have their own jobs and families, and they completely lack the time and the resources to clean all of that out, let alone update a dated mid-century house to modern retail standards.
The sheer physical labor required to empty an inherited home is staggering. This is where the as-is nature of the direct cash buyer goes from being a nice perk to becoming the primary selling point.
Because the buyer handles it all.
Right, a direct buyer absorbs that labor. The executors can literally walk through the house, take the sentimental items they want, the family photos, the antique clock, pack up what they need, and legally leave the rest of the junk behind.
That is wild.
They can leave the 20-year-old sofa, the garage full of boxes, and the overgrown yard. The cash buyer handles the clean-out. The focus for the family shifts entirely away from grueling property management and toward simply settling the estate and moving on.
Take what you want and leave the rest. That is a level of convenience you absolutely cannot get on the traditional market.
Not at all.
If you leave a garage full of trash for a retail buyer, they will sue you or delay the closing. But this brings us back to the ultimate question of the math. If we are really going to understand this trade-off between the cash market and the traditional market, we have to look at the hidden costs of going the traditional route.
Because the gross listing price you see on an act is almost never what the seller actually gets.
Right. It's never what you put in your bank account.
The hidden costs are substantial, and the source material emphasizes that this is the most overlooked aspect of conventional sales. First and foremost, you have traditional real estate agent commissions.
Okay, let's talk numbers on that.
A standard commission consumes roughly 6% of the final sale price, taken right off the top at closing.
Let's do the math on that for a second. If you have a $500,000 home in Riverside, 6% is $30,000. That is an enormous amount of equity evaporating instantly.
And that's just the start.
Right, because the guide lists a whole cascade of other deductions too.
Yeah, beyond commissions, you have closing costs, title insurance fees, and something called seller concessions.
What are those?
This is incredibly common in a market where buyers are stretched thin. The buyer will literally ask you, the seller, to pay a percentage of their closing costs just so they can afford to close the loan.
Wow, so you're subsidizing their purchase.
Exactly. Add in those staging expenses and repair costs we mentioned, and your net profit is shrinking rapidly. And there's a really fascinating insight in John Constantine's articles. Overpricing is cited as the absolute leading cause of stagnant listings.
Yes, homeowners look at an automated estimate online. They get anchored to an artificially high number and they refuse to list for anything less. So the home just sits on the market for months.
And while it sits, the meter is running.
Exactly. The holding costs. You are still paying property taxes every single month. You are still paying utility bills, homeowners insurance, HOA fees, and the mortgage interest itself during that entire 90-day listing period.
It really adds up.
If the house sits for 6 months, you've bled thousands of dollars just keeping the lights on.
Contrast that complex, bleeding math with the financial transparency of the direct cash sale. It's designed to be perfectly simple mathematics. There are zero commissions paid to agents or brokers.
None at all.
There's zero out-of-pocket expenses for mandatory repairs or cosmetic upgrades. And you completely eliminate those months of holding costs because you close in 7 days.
Right.
The offer that is presented to you during that initial evaluation is the exact to-the-penny amount you receive wired to your account on closing day.
So what does this all mean for you listening? Think about it like looking at a job offer. It's the difference between staring at your gross salary on paper versus looking at your actual take-home pay after federal taxes, state taxes, health insurance, and retirement deductions are stripped away.
That is the perfect way to frame it.
In a traditional home sale, you get the dopamine hit of seeing a high gross list price. But your take-home pay at the closing table is quietly eaten away by commissions, concessions, and months of holding costs.
The direct cash offer is your exact take-home pay, guaranteed up front. And there's a very critical, time-sensitive application for this transparency mentioned in the article's foreclosure intervention.
Oh, well, that's a huge one.
It is. For homeowners in Riverside who have suffered a job loss or medical emergency and have fallen behind on their mortgage payments, they are facing aggressive collection efforts from their bank. If the bank forecloses, the homeowner loses whatever equity they had, and their credit score is destroyed for nearly a decade.
But the guide explains that speed here is quite literally a financial lifeline. A 7 to 14-day cash sale can actually beat the bank's clock.
Exactly.
The direct buyer purchases the home, immediately pays off the mortgage lender, stops the foreclosure tracks dead, and protects the seller's long-term credit score.
It allows them to walk away with whatever equity is left, rather than losing everything to the bank's legal fees. This raises an important question for anyone evaluating their assets. What is the true value of liquid capital and financial certainty?
It's hard to put a price on that.
Right. For a homeowner trying to budget for paying off high-interest credit card debt or purchasing a new vehicle or accurately funding their retirement account, having exact figures is paramount. Removing the anxiety of surprise deductions allows them to confidently plan their next move. The transparency provides immense quantifiable peace of mind.
It really is a completely different paradigm for looking at real estate. We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today, but for you listening, whether you live in a historic neighborhood in Riverside, a new build in the suburbs, or anywhere else in the country, the key takeaway is understanding these two very divergent paths of asset liquidation.
Yeah, they are two completely different tools.
On one hand, you have the high-friction, highly contingent, potentially higher gross traditional market. On the other hand, you have the high-speed, highly transparent, as-is cash market. Knowing the underlying mechanics of both and knowing how your specific life stage dictates which path makes sense is an absolutely crucial piece of your overall financial literacy.
It's about recognizing that you always have options outside the conventional narrative. You aren't trapped by the traditional way of doing things. And exploring these sources leaves us with something really important to consider going forward.
What's that?
Well, if the traditional real estate market continues to become more complex, more expensive, and more demanding of that move-in ready perfection from buyers who can barely afford the down payment, will the premium we place on convenience, speed, and certainty eventually make the direct cash sale the standard way we sell homes rather than just the alternative?
Wow, that is a fascinating thought to leave on. If time truly is money, will the alternative become the standard? It really makes you look at that freshly painted front door and the smell of those fresh-baked cookies at an open house in a totally different light. Are they a welcoming invitation or just a very expensive, very stressful distraction? Thank you for joining us as we unpack this topic, and we look forward to diving deep into our next set of sources with you soon.